Alright folks, Acidic Roots back here with more of the beef ravioli run of Mystic Quest, and so basically we're gonna knock out Doulahan and then head into Pazuzu's tower. Now really this is one of the nastiest towers in the game. Once we get past this character you'll see that, but honestly it just depends upon how you approach it, because really there are quite a few battles, but if you know the strategy to get past it, it's not quite as bad. But yeah, there's really only, after Pazuzu's tower, there's only one other dungeon, and that's it. So we're pretty much about in the home stretch of this game. I've said that before, but the basic context about it is just me trying to say that, yeah, I sense that it probably would only be like 2 or 3 more episodes after this, because Pazuzu gets beaten in this episode, believe it. So that's just kind of the thing. So we're wrapping this up, and it just really depends upon how tough, like, the final boss is, because I know, like, from what I've seen, I mean, I don't know how badly you guys want spoilers, but you're going to be seeing some of these characters again. That just kind of happens to be the concept behind it, but really, for the most part, the tricks that this game has left is kind of on the out and out, so that's kind of the thing, but it's going to feel good to finally wrap up this project and kind of move on, so I can concentrate. I mean, just within the past 15-20 minutes I took care of Donkey Kong Country 3, so I'm just trying to get that in motion to start having some more games, and you know, that's the situation, that's the straight and narrow of it. So but yeah, this game has plagued me for quite some time. I mean, really it's not so much that it's that tough, it's just the fact that it really is kind of, I mean, I don't want to say it's monotonous, but it gets pretty close to that, just in terms of like the I mean, you really have to have patience for this particular game. That's what you have to pay attention to, is just, I mean, it's just kind of a concept of how things were back in the early 90s and stuff. I mean, most people are used to simply having to grind for maybe like 20 minutes and that's it, but in this game it's more like hours, if not more than that. I mean, I really have not engaged in the battlefield. It's not necessarily that you have to do it. As long as you have somewhat of competence with RPGs, you don't really have to grind as badly. But this game kind of makes the assumption that you do it. And of course, there are techniques that I don't have that would be kind of profoundly useful were I to have them. That's just kind of the thing, so that's alright, you know. Regardless, this is another Final Fantasy game to add to the repertoire. If only I could get this sort of with Final Fantasy VII, then we'd really be in business. But, it's just kind of one of those things. Really, the concept of Let's Plays is really dying out. I just don't know what it is about, like, YouTube anymore. I feel like there's just folks who just stream, like, every single day, and this is kinda... I feel like people are getting so used to them. They probably know, like, their streamers' favorite foods, favorite drinks, what car they drive, where they work, all those differential things. It's probably just in and out with that sort of stuff. Their favorite pizza toppings. I mean, you just would have to really say, as is kind of the concept at this rate, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would like for there to be a resurgence. Like, I remember last I checked, one of the most popular members on Twitch was Ninja, but then Ninja kind of evaporated from Twitch like a couple years ago. I don't know where he went. I know he's at least on YouTube, but just to kind of say, Ninja was like one of the few Twitchers, I don't know if you call them Twitchers, but Twitch people, Twitch streamers that really catapulted themselves. I mean, there were also loads of like women who were pretty revealing in their, you know, get-ups and such, just to kind of say, I don't know how that's kind of worked nowadays, but it's just kind of, this is a situation that kind of goes about that, but, yeah, I mean, circa 2019, 2020 is about the situation with Twitch and such, but, yeah, I mean, the problem with it is video games need to get back on track. I mean, I could get into this whole tangent and talking about that, but it's like these developers, the Square, that made this game. It's like, what have they been up to? Why can they not make games like this anymore? This is a simple game to reproduce and do again. You know, it seems like it would be that simple enough to take care of and just kind of have that context to be able to do that. But, yeah, I don't know. I mean, they made, like, I'm pretty excited about the Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge game that's getting ready to come out. But then at the same time, I would just have to say they need to do that with Final Fantasy. They need to make like a Mystic Quest like one of these characters like Kefka's Revenge or something. I don't care what they do. They just need to bring back some classic Final Fantasy. That's the thing. I mean, Final Fantasy has always kind of been a one-shot with each game. I mean, the characters, once they complete their adventure, that's it. They just, for the most part, minus like Final Fantasy X, there hasn't been really too many other renditions. It's just very uncommon, but I feel like if these characters end their adventure, like Benjamin here, I mean, I get the portrayal that he's really only a teenager, so he had the rest of his life ahead of him, you know, and that's kind of the concept there. But I don't know. This is kind of like, I wonder what Zidane would be up to for Final Fantasy IX, or even Squall. You know, some of those characters is just like hell. Squall was pretty slick. I mean, he kind of had that emo kind of asshole vibe about him, but it was just kind of a cool context. But that's what I'm talking about. I mean, those Final Fantasy characters that kicked ass, is over 20 years ago, but I just can't think of the ones. Like, how many people can name, like, the Final Fantasy 14 characters and Final Fantasy 13 even? They're just not nearly as talked about. But, that was simple. Just randomly beat this character, and then it just kind of prompts you off. It's like, oh yeah, okay. So, yeah, so the intention here is to say exit. You know, obviously you're gonna figure out that you have to go on to like the next area, but the character really didn't I mean, I guess he did provide backdrop when we initiated battle with him, but now it's just the conquest of getting to Pazuzu's tower. So this is kind of a small area. I just felt like this was going to have more panache to it, but I guess it didn't. I'm always going to say that about this game. It's just so scant. I don't know if it's just because I have expectations as a Super Nintendo game or just what. It's kind of odd. I mean, because this is quite the lengthy game. I mean, to me, this is longer than a game like Super Mario World or something, you know. I'm just kind of getting lost here. I don't really know necessarily what to do. But yeah, you have to jump. Just remember, this is an action RPG. So, there'll be stuff like that in the final dungeon. So, yeah, Mount Gale. So yeah, but there's still more that needs to be done here. Just trying to figure out, like, probably gonna have to get some food today, some stuff like that. I need to hit up Taco Bell eventually, that type stuff. Get some good grub. Gonna have to do more Donkey Kong 3. It's another thing I'm gonna have to look forward to. And then of course I gotta figure out the next games. I would really like to do some more PlayStation 1 games. It's just too bad that some of those really kind of give me difficulty. Like, I feel like this had a pretty balanced difficulty. I mean, it's strenuous and monotonous, but it is fun. And I think that's kind of the concept, is just as far as like trying to find like certain kinds of PlayStation games that kind of kick ass. I mean, Crash Team Racing was simple enough. I mean, ultimately that game pissed me off, but it was pretty much worth it. I am going to have to go back to Tomb Raider and see what's up with that. I just kind of, the main thing about that game is the concept of trying to kind of figure out just what to do, because the difficulty just ramped up way too quickly, and the controls just need to be different. I mean, I definitely feel like you should be able to use the DualShock for it. I mean, I know the game was made before the DualShock, but it's something that should be simple enough to kind of manifest. But that's kind of, I mean, I might have to do Tomb Raider 2, but I kind of feel like I really liked the first Tomb Raider. I like the concept of the damn game. So the gameplay was great. This was, the controls were not great. But yeah, so Otto is telling us the concept of some of that stuff. So we've got our quest here. We just have to hop to it. you notice that Windia music is not quite as forlorn as it was before. So yeah, the reason why these segments are going so sluggish is just because I had just done that whole segment from part 7. That was the previous recording session. So obviously Pazuzu's Tower was tacked onto this episode because this was only going to be like 10 minutes otherwise. But that's the true concept of it, is that was as far as the previous recording segment got. But now we initiate like we're gonna have some fun. So basically, the concept. Hang on here. Yeah, so basically, the concept behind Pazuzu's Tower is you want to trap him, and I didn't quite showcase this with enough acumen that I would have wanted. But the thing about it is that well, I guess I did have the skill, but it's just kind of you know, there is a process to where this dungeon can be a lot more of a nightmare if you kind of are not sure of what to do. So really, you have to lock the switches because there's 7 floors to this tower. That's the thing, and really 7 or 6, and you have to lock the floors. So if you encounter Pazuzu, he'll go to one of the other floors, and eventually you have to go to like the even number floors to trap him on the odd number floors, and eventually when you trap him on both floors, he'll fight you. And so that's kind of the concept is but the thing about it is this seems simple enough to just trap him on the floors, but you're basically getting in about over 40 battles while doing that. A lot. You're definitely going to be fighting dozens of these assholes, so just get ready for that. I mean, as long as you have seeds, the main thing that you're going to want is just to buy seeds, because basically at this stage, cure and heal are just simple enough to kind of use, and for the most part, it'll heal them back in one fell swoop. So, I mean, unless you're like really leveled up, but even then, it's not much to think about. So yeah, so he probably just went to like floor 3 or floor 5 or something. We don't really know, but you just have to climb up and fight every enemy in between. That's the real magnet. This is what I talk about when I say monotonous. It's just trying to understand that it's expecting you to kind of have the grit to be able to fight damn near every enemy in this dungeon, or pretty close to it. But as long as you have seeds and patience, that's about all the stuff you really need. And obviously patience is not an item. I'm talking about patience like the virtue that you learn in everyday life, but that's just kind of the situation. But so yeah, that's the main kind of thing there is yeah, there's just gonna be a lot of fights. I tried to skip a handful of these. I knew like enough of these were gonna need to be skipped, but that's the main course of this dungeon, is mostly fighting these assholes, and then eventually we'll get to Pazuzu throughout this episode. But that's the basic concept. But really, this is the longest of the 4 dungeons that we've seen thus far. And really, the boss is not that tough, but it's just the concept of the game is kind of hoping that you won't have the stamina to get to him. And all it really takes is just having seeds. So, but Kaylee is pretty useful here. I mean, that's definitely the thing. She continues to be strong, and despite the fact that we've used her for like the past couple of areas now, she still continues to have her usefulness. So pay attention to that. As long as she's, I mean, the only real thing that Kaylee has as a weakness is just trying to say that basically the status effects. I mean, as long as she doesn't get turned to stone or put to sleep, I think for the most part you should be fine. And all it really takes is just having Benjamin tend to that. So, but really these eyeballs are assholes. You want to knock them out first, because they'll use self-destruct in some cases, and that can one-shot your characters. It just happens to be the thing there. I prefer to use like the grenade move. I use that as often as possible just to get damage on all of them, and then Kaylee usually one-shots them after that. But it's kind of the thing there. But they're trying a status attack with like every move now. They know. I mean, Zone is more prone to being okay, but Kaylee kind of, because she can't really level up, that's kind of the concept there. So, but she is useful. So. But yeah, strap yourselves in, folks. I would definitely say this would almost be a concept. Like I said, I mean, I called this the beef ravioli run, but I don't have a problem with y'all getting KFC. I mean, yeah, I would definitely encourage you to get KFC and some of that type stuff. KFC, Burger King, doesn't really matter. Just go out and about, and pretty much by the time you get back, I'll probably still be in this dungeon somewhere. So that's kind of the thing. But yeah, there's no way of... I'm just trying to figure out which way I can go without having to get in the most fights. But you do have to virtually somewhat know what you're doing. Yeah, really, all you want to do is just get to the top of the tower. That's all you have to do. And these chimeras are simple enough just because, like, there's a certain spell. It's either, like, yeah, arrow takes care of them and basically one-shots them. So that's definitely something you want to use here, is just to wipe them out pretty effectively. And, I mean, because basically, like I said, as long as you have the seeds, there's not much to kind of worry about. But you do have to make sure that you don't get petrified. Both party members don't get petrified, and then you also want to make sure that you at least have the life spell. So that's kind of... But for the most part, this is really not that intimidating a dungeon. It's just kind of, like I said, it's the monotony that kind of goes for it. But I'm not sure. I want to say that, like, if you make it to, like, a certain length and then you exit the dungeon, the main thing about it is that, I do think, like, I didn't really exit the dungeons, but I want to say if you do have to, of course, start over. That is kind of the concept, but it's really, like, it's just really about plowing through. That's all you really have to pay attention to. So... Just really trying to... Yeah, but you definitely want to heal often with Pazuzu because he is pretty powerful. He's definitely the strongest enemy up to this point, and he, in some cases, he'll attack both characters. So you want to make sure that you... I mean, really, Kaylee is at a strong enough level to the point where it's not as if that you have to worry about her having too much problems, but he can still, in some cases, I think, one-shot her, so you have to always be healing. In some cases, like every other turn, or at least you're not going to be able to attack with both characters per turn too many times. That is kind of the thing. Is something, but that's the concept of RPG, role-playing game strategists, is just being able to understand a method to knock out some of these characters, because I guarantee the last boss might be an ass also. So we'll see how that goes. But I think it should be simple enough. I mean, it's just kind of preparing for said thing. After this dungeon, I'm definitely going to probably get a bunch of seeds off screen. I'm just going to spend all my cash on those. That's about all you really need. Other than that, it's simple enough to plow through this. So, yeah, it's just nuts. You know, paying attention to this relative playthrough and the concept that's gone along with it. I'm just kind of... At this stage, I am starting to get kind of sick of this game. I mean, honestly, I didn't think it was going to be that enveloped, but it's pretty big chore trying to do these Final Fantasy games, and that's just this one. This is the most basic of all the ones they made for the Super Nintendo, minus, like, Mario RPG, but, like, Final Fantasy IV, Final Fantasy VI, Secret of Mana, some of those games are pretty, like, lengthy. That's just the thing about it. They all are. Even Chrono Trigger, some of those. But yeah, just keep the heal potions in motion. But Mana Core. Yeah, the enemies are usually pretty interesting. I mean, they're kind of assholes to fight, but once you get past that, they do at least have interesting types. I mean, it's something the Final Fantasy games have had for a while. So at least the enemies are initially interesting as you first fight them, just because you don't know what they're going to be. But, like, yeah, I saw, like, just numerous things like that Chimera from earlier. Kind of the thing. Yeah, I'm pretty well hungry. I definitely could stand to have some McDonald's breakfast right about now. That would really hit the spot. I really don't even know McDonald's hours. I feel like, to me, they seem like they would be open 24 hours. It seems like they should, but of course they're not. Like, I don't even know if McDonald's is open 24/7 in California or New York or something. It's just like, at this stage, I don't understand how they can have stores in like Japan and Russia and places like that, and, you know, like India and those type places, but then they can't have, like, you know, they can't have 24-hour stores. It's like, come on. You think people don't get hungry at 3:30 a.m.? Something like that. It relatively kind of happens to be the atmosphere. But yeah, we've got these. The game knows that these eyeball enemies piss me off. I think that's like the main situation about it. Is I'm getting tired of having to fight these guys just because they have kind of shrouded ways of attacking. They have all their status attacks, and then they also have their self-destruct function. So it's just like, between those two things, these are the enemies that I don't really want to fight at all. But the game knows that, so you of course fight them a lot. So it's just kind of, you just have to keep on your toes. So yeah, we're just scaling up the dungeon. I need to sneeze, so hang on. But yeah, we're racking up GP like crazy. I just would definitely have to say, yeah, I mean, that's one thing, is so, I mean, really at this stage, it's not like you need GP for anything. I mean, for the most part, I find the ends kind of pointless. I think they're just more for cosmetics, more so than anything else. Is because, really, it costs less to buy a seed that can heal you like 5 or 6 times, compared to staying at the inn for 95 or 150 GP. It just doesn't make sense, you know? Because you can, I mean, basically you can heal both Kaylee and Zone 2 or 3 times. You can use the cure magic move 5 times, and that would do more than going to the inn 3 or 4 times. It's pointless, you know? I mean, but I think it's just intended. I don't know why that kind of is. I mean, you look at the concept, it's more intended. I mean, this really is not too much. I mean, when I look at it that way, it's really not too much of a social game, is because the characters don't really say much. There's just really not much of a point. It just kind of assumes that you're just going to use seeds and cure potions and the cure magic and life spells, more so than actually going to the inn and talking to the clerk and that type of stuff and saying, hey, you know, 95 GP a night, do you want to stay? And it's like, well, you know, it should be 20, you know, as far as that's concerned. But I mean, Final Fantasy games have at least kind of courted this issue. I don't know if it's all Final Fantasy games that have that problem, but for the most part, you'll notice that I pretty much never stayed at these inns in these episodes. So there should be some incentive. There really should. Benjamin's a light sleeper, basically, and so is Kaylee. But, relatively happens to be the concept. Just, but now we've got to be introduced to these new guys. So these guys were at the beginning of the game. The sorcerers are kind of assholes just because they heal themselves. That's kind of the thing, is you want to make sure that you attack them both in one turn, because they'll just go right back to normal. And I don't know if the enemies in this game run out of I don't know if they run out of MP, so they may just be able to keep on healing themselves. So yeah, Kaylee is obviously stronger than Zone at this point, so you just have to kind of remember that. But Thanatos. This is a rehash of another character, but that's fine. That actually doesn't bug me. It's kind of interesting when they do that, just because it kind of shows like a it's kind of like a way of showing strength, just because it's like, hey, do you remember when this character gave you all this trouble like 3 weeks or a month ago, especially back in like 1993? Like you say, hey, you remember 4 weeks ago when this character really whipped your ass? Well, now you beat him in like 5 minutes, kind of the thing. So yeah, more fights. I mean, it damn near feels like, I mean, some people, if they don't have the right luck, they'll damn near fight every enemy in this damn dungeon. And this is like, geez, you know, that's just kind of the thing about it. But, you kind of have to pay attention to. But yeah, we definitely need to heal Benjamin here. So, and the thing about Kaylee is she's quick. So she's about as quick as these enemies. So that's one thing. If you're going to have either of the two characters heal, unless your Benjamin character is actually higher level than Kaylee, it's best to have Kaylee heal first, because she'll get it off quicker. So but yeah, so it's kind of trying to think of other things that have been kind of going on, like war in Ukraine still going on, stuff like that. COVID, don't really know how that's been doing. I've been kind of watching the morning news these days more so than the evening news. But then the thing about the morning news is it just has a lot more pep in its step. It's just a lot more kind of bouncy and kind of coffee talk type stuff. Just more, I mean, the evening news has so much more of like a kind of robust and kind of stark kind of appeal towards this. I actually prefer the evening news, but the morning news is kind of like, hey, you know, it's time for work, have a good day type stuff, kind of the thing. And I just, I mean, a lot of that's just fluff, and it's just kind of, I mean, I know that they can't have like that stark attitude at like 8 o'clock in the morning. You know, most people like the good morning type stuff, but it's just kind of, you know. Maybe some of y'all are morning people. If you are watching this on my gaming channel, you'll see that I did intend for this Mystic Quest game to initially be a morning playthrough. I had every intention of kind of sizing it up that way. That was the point, was for this to be something that you watched at like 3:35 a.m. and 4:15 a.m. and that type stuff, just to kind of say like, just burning through the morning hours, the midnight oil and stuff. So but really, it shouldn't be that. You definitely want to buy bombs. I definitely recommend, just because that's the quickest way to kind of taking care of these enemies, is being able to do that. But Benjamin can rotate between like the attacks that he finds most effective. But for the most part, I use bombs a lot, just because it's the easiest way to kind of. I mean, as long as they don't heal themselves like those sorcerers, you don't really. So I will prefer fighting the Chimeras to the Sorcerers, because I can at least one-shot those. It's kind of the thing. But we wound up fighting a Sorcerer anyways. It's like, how does that feel, Pally? You know, that's alright. We'll just knock out the Sorcerer first, because I don't even know. Well, yeah. They might be able to actually heal the other enemies too. Some games, the enemies can heal other enemies. So yeah, I'm just not fucking around. Yeah, we're at the top of the tower, if you can't tell. If you didn't tell by the bell, now you can definitely tell. But you would think that the enemy would be here. That's really the truth of what you would think about it, is just trying to say that this is probably normally where you'd encounter the boss, but it's just like, nope, not this time. Denied. So fight a Thanatos instead. Yeah. So really, you want to use arrow often too. I mean, just get used to using some of these magic spells. I don't use magic all the time because I try to save it for the characters that piss me off. But yeah, it's just kind of. So. Yeah, and the more stuff I need is stuff to drink. I really dislike it when I only have water to drink. Sometimes that'll happen, and so I'll drink all the Powerades and orange juices, and then I just won't have anything to drink, and I just, you know, some folks could be like, whoa, that's crazy, but I'm not a water person. I really don't enjoy solely drinking water. This really happens to be the concept behind it. I mean, I pretty much will take almost any drink, minus like diet drinks, or V8 or something, you know, but I just am not a healthy drinker. So yeah, I'm just gonna feel my mouth being parched right now. I'm just kind of like, damn, well, I gotta get some food going. Yeah, we're gonna get these guys knocked out, and that should basically take care of it. This game is still relatively cheap. I mean, it just assumes that you're going to fight most characters in this dungeon, but preemptively, like, you're getting quite a bit of GP. I mean, by the end of this game, you should easily have 5 digits, damn near a GP. I mean, I think you'd have that anyways earlier in the game, but just to kind of say, like, it really should not be. I mean, there's not much to purchase in this game. This game does not have, like, a catalog, like normal Final Fantasy. I mean, you're not going to be able to buy armor because most of the time you find it just like in the dungeons and stuff, which is really surprising. I'm really surprised that like you can't just buy like stronger armor and help yourself out sooner, but it really intends for you to just find them through the dungeons. Which is kind of why I say that this is like a decaf RPG, because it doesn't do things that normal RPGs should do. And this game is kind of tough enough to the point where it's like, hey, you know, that would really help, but it just doesn't do it. You know, it just wants you, it prefers to have you do the fights. But, so we're going to one-shot this Chimera, and then, I think I just skipped the battle, honestly. I think that's another one I snipped, but. Yeah, it'd be fun to go to garage sales right around this time. I need to sneeze again, so hold up. Yeah, it'd be fun to go to garage sales around this time. Hit some of them up. Even though I never really find anything when I do go to those. I mean, I don't really go as much as I just watch other members of my family go, but just to kind of say, I do usually at least get McDonald's and some shit like that out of it, so that's kind of the concept there. But I am going to get an Amazon card today. I'm basically going to mess around and get a new game. That's kind of the concept, which will be displayed on this channel, so I'm looking forward to kind of having that happen. So I'm just, between this game wrapping up and me kind of having to me basically having to figure out, just making sure I have the drive to want to do it. It's kind of between those two situations, so. But, yeah. So, but then I also have Donkey Kong Country 3, and I'm just going to have to really get that game in motion. But yeah, like I said, I just would like to kind of get some more kind of PlayStation 1 games in motion, but it's just kind of, for some reason, video games are just really plaguing me. This has just not been my year for gaming. That's really the problem with it, is I look at so many video games, I'm just like, damn it, you know? Just because, I mean, I feel like me being able to play these games in my 30s should definitely be able, with the concept of me being able to say that it should not be giving me this much difficulty. I mean, if I can excel at games like Blackthorn and Super Metroid, I should definitely be able to excel at games like Crash Bandicoot. of all games and stuff like that, and Tomb Raider. But this is like, damn, really happens to kind of be the thing there. I mean, it's not like I feel any less of a gamer, but just to kind of say it's just like, you know, some of these really do wind up pissing me off. But so, alright, so once again we're gonna find Pazuzu, and we're actually gonna get to him. So let's get prepared for that. It's about time to fight his punk ass. So yep. So I'm gonna heal up. I mean, really, this is the last batch. I mean, honestly, this game could have stretched out further, and it could have really had us like go through more layers of the dungeon. But it was just kind of like I did do quite a bit. I've been here for like over 20 minutes, which, I mean, normally this could be like an hour-long dungeon, but it's been pretty emphatic so far. So you have to pay attention to. So. Well, we do have to use the bombs. We'll get this chest here, and then we'll be on our way. So, yeah, Pazuzu is coming up. That's the next area that's getting ready to happen. But it's just important to remember, like, the concept of how to approach, like, boss characters near the end of a role-playing game, because this boss can wipe out these characters in basically about 2 turns if you're not careful. So, really, if Benjamin is leveled up enough, I would definitely say it shouldn't be too much of a problem. Like, if you've done all of these battlefields and you've got him, like, to level 30, 33, something like that, it really shouldn't matter. But, yeah, I mean, Kayleigh's not going to be able to level up, so you do have to kind of keep tabs on the fact that her HP is basically going to be stationed this whole time. But she's still competent enough to, you know, be able to not just get wiped out that easily. So that's just kind of the thing. I mean, really, it's not exactly as if battlefields are necessary. It's just kind of it's an easy way to get the experience so you have less difficulty later on. I mean, you should know that by this stage, but just to kind of say. So, these sorcerers are still assholes, and we've got to get them taken care of. It's one of the Vanguard last things before we get to Pazuzu here. So, I suspect there's going to be enemies like this in the final dungeon that are going to be kind of ass goblins about it. It really happens to kind of be the thing. Yep. So I'm trying to think of what for is really going on. I got me some donuts. Definitely felt like that was good to get some donuts and stuff, and I'm kind of looking forward to kind of having some munchies here in a little bit. It's kind of the situation, but yeah. So keep in mind, if you do not have better luck with this dungeon, you're going to be seeing at least 1, 2, or 3 others of those switches that you have to block to make sure that Pazuzu doesn't run away. So, kind of the remark about it. Yep. I'm almost starting to run out of things to kind of talk about with this damn game. I mean, really, this is... I mean, I can do this in like 15-minute settings. I do feel like it's simple enough to do, but I'm just kind of like, you know, as the whole atmosphere is just me trying to figure out what exactly to shoot the moon with about in this segment. But, I mean, I know I need to kind of study this game a little bit more to make sure I have the right aspect of what to do after this, but, yep. So, alright, here's Pazuzu. So, okay, this has been the touted fight. This is the last of the 4 crystals fight here. So, this is basically the penultimate boss that's worth its salt, I would have to guess. I think there's like one other mini boss battle, but apart from that, this is it here. So, let's wipe this guy out. But keep in mind, like, when this boss starts to take damage, he kind of has like a defensive magic spell. So, he's always going to do something to where it's not just going to be simply he takes damage and you notice it. I mean, really, he's going to do his defense spell, and then when he opens up from the defense spell, you'll notice that he's taking damage. So it's just kind of... I mean, you don't want to use magic when he uses his defense spell, because I didn't test it to find out what would happen, but I assume it's probably something that would kind of be a nasty counter attack of some sort. So it's kind of the thing there. But yeah, so really this boss is not that much to speak of. It's just plainly, it's a lengthy fight, and then on top of that, there's just a number of tricks that you have to remember. I mean, really, that's the whole concept. I mean, this is a very clever dungeon in what it did, but it's just the fact that it's really counting on the monotony pissing you off more so than anything else. But yeah, Arrow really works a number on this boss. This is another enemy, just like the Chimeras, that Arrow works outstanding with. And then the white spell does pretty well. You want the attacks that will do 4 digits on this guy. That's definitely kind of the thing there. So, and also keep in mind, if you have the choice between who to have heal, use Kaylee, because unless Benjamin is leveled up quite a bit more, she's going to be quicker. That's kind of the thing. And this guy's pretty fast, actually. So this is really not... This is kind of the concept, so it's mainly, I suspect this guy has like over 20,000 HP, something like that. I'm not really for certain, but he has quite a bit. So I like that concept as far as knowing how much HP some of the bosses have, just in case, you know, so you have like a ballpark as far as saying. I mean, really, this is before, like, this game was before internet, where you could just say, okay, you know, you have a ballpark of knowing. That's kind of the allure of the mystery somewhat, is just being able to say, like, hey, this guy could have 60,000 HP, you'd never know the difference, you know? But that's something that's actually bugged me about role-playing games, is when you don't know. I mean, it's just a useful feature to be able to scan and say, okay, how long is this going to take here? Because, I mean, really, you could be just, like, you know, 400 HP away from beating the asshole, and then something happens, and it's like, oh, you know. But, I mean, yeah, this game is not horribly tough. It's just kind of... But yeah, so I've got Donkey Kong Country 3 squared up, and I'm just trying to figure out what... I've also got the next games in mind that I'm going to attempt. This is kind of the concept of making sure I can do it. That's really the thing, is I just need to get back to Tomb Raider and see if there's other games that I can mess with. Because that's kind of the thing, is, I mean, it's like I've said how many times on Acid Roots, it's been really nightmarish trying to figure out what people want. I mean, for some reason, I just feel like this channel is kind of a dead YouTube channel, where it still gets views, but progressively it doesn't make much of a difference, just because people don't want like a classic Let's Play channel. And that's just the whole concept about it, is it's really just kind of like a fucking choke point, just because there's nothing to really do. It's just like the traffic is T-boned, and there's no way to really get past this point, just because it's either, you know, I don't know, I've always hated that about YouTube, is when people set up choke points of this kind of notion, because it's just like, you know, like, I feel like the movie commentaries are one thing, but it's not really what I want to do, and that's kind of the concept. You know, I started this channel off as like a gaming channel, but, you know, I do a couple videos to kind of help boost things, and then people are like, well, just keep doing that. It's like, you know, like, yeah, but I also like video games, but it just seems like most folks don't give a rat's ass about that. So I don't know, it's just something kind of extra on the palette as far as that's concerned. But I don't know, I mean, I feel like there's just a number of folks that just want like exclusively video games, or exclusively, you can't be multifaceted. I just feel like that really kind of, like, if you know how to play basketball, you can't play football also. That's kind of the situation. We just don't like these bilingual folks that do that sort of stuff, or trilingual even, you know. It's just kind of, you have to stick with one trade, because I mean, I feel like that's severely limiting, and it's kind of backwards for the community on YouTube to think such things. But I'm a perfect example of that being living proof of what happens on the internet. So it's just kind of, I mean, it's not as bad on my blog channel. If you're watching this from acidic roots, it's not like it's like that over there. But, you know, it's something I deal with on my gaming channel. But, yeah, so this phase right here, Pazuzu's almost entirely beaten. Something to kind of know. He's still using Pile Driver, but he learns to or he kind of starts using like the stone attack later on, and that could be the complete reversal of like this match. I mean, keep in mind that both characters get petrified, then it's over. So it's basically a game over. So there's no way of like that's just it. So you have to really definitely post haste use heal if one of your characters gets turned to stone, especially if it's Kaylee that gets turned to stone. You don't want to fuck around. So alright, so that should virtually take care of this guy. So that's the whole concept. Is there's, like I said, there's some loose ends that need to be tied up here in the next episode, and that's kind of the concept, is just being able to do that. We're going to cross the T's and dot the I's, and then I suspect that this full-blown project will probably be 10, 11, or 12 parts, because really part 9 is just going to be the loose ends, and then like that minor boss fight, and then from there we just go to the final dungeon. So it's really relatively simple, but the next episode, part 9, is going to be relatively long. It's going to be longer than 52 minutes. It's probably going to be longer than 57 minutes. I'm going to try to cram a lot into it just to really get the kind of stuff going here to the point where we can shave off like a bunch of moments that are just kind of extraneous and stuff. But I mean, really, funny thing, I mean, despite the fact that there's probably only like another 45 or hour and a half left of this game, it still feels like it can turn into like another 5 or 6 hours, just because it's just pure laziness. It's one thing about being a gamer, is just trying to say that you really have to have the ability to, kind of finish up and lay down the work to get some of this done. I just think that's kind of the concept behind it. So, but yeah, so that's another concept of this, is just exiting the dungeon. So that's kind of the thing. They don't just, I mean, I've said this numerous times, but it's just one more venture here that we have to get out of the dungeon now. So. Yeah, I miss role-playing games like this. I mean, this is just a good shot in the arm of just overall fun. And it really does have that concept as far as saying that. Being able to pay attention. I mean, there's probably still at least another 20, 30, 40 battles here that you could do if you really wanted to. But, I mean, it's just lengthy. I mean, really, if you had to fight every single character in this dungeon, it would, of course, be a pretty nasty ordeal. You'd probably need, like, at least 20, 25 seeds just to kind of make sure that it was concurrent and stuff. Just effectively was fluid the whole way through and worked. But yeah, it's just it's kind of the situation about this game, as it prides itself in its monotony, I would have to say. So yeah, these dungeons are easy to get lost in. I suspect the final dungeon is going to be like that. It's kind of one of those situations. It's just preparing for it. But I do like this game. It's Final Fantasy. It is typical Final Fantasy. It's just basically a basic Final Fantasy. It's the main thing about it. It doesn't have the endearing characters and overt cast of folks that have their battles and struggles and demons. It's just plain, this is basically just Benjamin's story. I mean, even these characters, Kaylee and Ruben and the rest of them, can't remember the rest of the characters, but just some of these folks, Captain Mac and the rest of those characters, it just is kind of like, they have points, but I figure that most folks probably just don't remember the extent of like what actually goes along with them. This is very much, when they're not here, you don't really give them much passive thought. Like, when Ruben got damaged like an episode and a half or 2 episodes ago, it was like, oh yeah, we've been dealing with all this stuff. It's kind of like, oh, whatever happened to him, So, but, I mean, the game tries. I mean, that's the thing. I do appreciate it. I mean, especially for 1992, it's outstanding. It did things. It was ahead of its time. It's kind of the situation there. It's definitely one of the better. I mean, this is probably the game that I would have went for after Super Mario World, had I, been the age I am now back in 1991, 93 and stuff, I would have said, yep, I'm picking up this game, picking up Street Fighter. I mean, you could imagine talking to people, you know, the standard chaps that you may encounter that were 18 and 22 back in 1992 and stuff, and asking, so what Super Nintendo games did you have back in 1993? And it's like, oh yeah, Street Fighter 2, Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time, Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, Super Mario Kart, Final Fantasy 4, Super Mario World, F-Zero, NBA Jam. Yeah, there's plenty of those games that are easy enough to kind of have sagas about and just stories to tell in that general regard. I just would have to kind of say, I mean, really, you know, I'm glad that this game has its merits to it, but, you know, that's the biggest complaint that you can have about a one-shot game is by the time it's over, it's like, damn, there's really nothing left of this, you know, it's kind of the situation there. It just relatively happens to kind of be the thing, so it's just like, there's just not much, but so you know, we'll about wrap up this episode, and then we'll head into part 9, which, like I said, is just tying up the loose ends, and then we'll kind of progress and eventually get to the final dungeon here. So that's kind of the situation. There's just not too much. It's a hop, skip, and a jump, and it'll be taken care of. It's the main concept behind it. We're going to meet this Captain Mac fellow that's been talked about for the past good while, and we'll head about our merry way. So there's not too many other characters left in this game to meet. I can safely say that. You know, probably another boss fight or two and the final boss, and that's about it. So alright folks, subscribe for more fun. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful night, and hopefully we'll see you soon in part 9.